Formula One just leaked its own emergency fix after only 3 races. Think about that. Years of planning. Hundreds of millions invested. A brand new era? And it's already being rewritten behind closed doors. Because what's happening on track is worse than anyone expected. Cars losing half their power, instantly, at over 300 kilometers per hour. Speed differences so extreme, drivers say it feels dangerous. And one crash that confirmed every warning was real. Now the FIA is scrambling. Not next season. Right now. Massive rule changes rushed in before Miami. But here's the twist. The leaked fixes don't just reveal the solution. They expose the problem. Because what the FIA is trying to fix might be built into the system itself. And if that's true, this isn't just a bad start. This could be one of the biggest failures in modern Formula One history. Stay with me. At first, nobody believed the leak was real. Because what it revealed shouldn't be happening in Formula One. Not this early. Not this fast. Rule changes are supposed to take months. Sometimes years. Debated. Tested. Refined. But this time, everything is happening at once. Why? Because the problem isn't small. It's structural. From the very first race, something didn't feel right. Drivers noticed it immediately. Not just in performance. In behavior. The car didn't respond consistently. Power came and disappeared. Moments that should be predictable weren't. And at first, they tried to adapt. That's what Formula One drivers do. They adjust. They learn. They find the limit. But this time, the limit kept changing. Because the system itself was changing the car in real time. Energy deployment. Battery cycles. Recovery modes. All happening constantly. All affecting performance, moment by moment. And that creates something Formula One has never really had before. Uncertainty. Not from the track. Not from the weather. From the car itself. And that's where everything begins to break. Because drivers are no longer reacting to racing conditions. They're reacting to a system. A system that decides when they have power. When they don't. When they can attack. When they can't. And that changes everything. Because now, it's not just about driving fast. It's about managing limitations. And for drivers, that feels wrong. Max Verstappen saw it immediately. He didn't describe it as difficult. He described it as unnatural. Overtakes that didn't make sense. Cars suddenly flying past, then dropping back. Speed that felt artificial. And once he said it, others couldn't ignore it. Because they were feeling the same thing. Different teams. Different cars. Same problem. And that's when the pattern became clear. This wasn't adaptation. This was something deeper. Because the system wasn't just influencing racing. It was controlling it. And once drivers feel that, everything changes. Because Formula One has always been about control. About precision. About knowing exactly what the car will do before it does it. Now, that certainty is gone. And without it, drivers don't push the same way. They hesitate. They second guess. They hold back. And that's the exact opposite of what this sport is built on. But here's where the leak becomes even more important. Because it confirms something drivers already suspected. The FIA knows. They've seen the data. They've seen the patterns. They understand the risk. Because the numbers don't lie. Sudden drops in power. Massive speed differences. Situations where one car is accelerating, while another is effectively slowing down. On the same straight. At the same time. That's not just inefficient. That's dangerous. And that's why these changes are happening now. Not later. Now. Because once the problem is confirmed, there's no room left to wait. Only to act. But here's the part that changes everything. These fixes don't solve the cause. They manage the consequences. And that means one thing. The real problem is still there. Hidden. Waiting. And the deeper you go into this story, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a regulation that needs tweaking. It's a system that might have been flawed from the very beginning. And that is where everything starts to escalate. And that's when the situation stops being technical and becomes political. Because now, it's not just about fixing the cars. It's about deciding who benefits and who loses. And that's where everything starts to fracture. Because while the FIA is preparing these changes, not everyone wants them. Some teams are pushing hard for immediate action. They're struggling. They haven't figured out the system. They're losing performance, race after race. For them, these changes are necessary. Urgent. But other teams are in a completely different position. They've already mastered the system. They understand the energy cycles. They know exactly when to deploy, when to harvest, how to avoid the worst of the problem. And because of that, they're winning. So for them, this isn't a flaw. It's an advantage. And every change the FIA is considering threatens that advantage. So naturally, they resist. Because in Formula One, no one gives up performance voluntarily. And that creates tension. Inside meetings, behind closed doors, in every discussion about what should happen next. Because now, this isn't just engineering. It's negotiation. Every adjustment, a compromise. Every solution, a battle. But here's where it becomes even more complex. Because the FIA doesn't have full freedom. They can't just change everything. The core concept is locked. 50% electric power. No MGUH. Agreements with manufacturers already signed. Long-term commitments already made. Which means one thing. They are trying to fix the outcome, without touching the cause. And that's the hardest problem of all. Because every fix is limited. Reduce power, you reduce speed. Increase recharge, you increase system dependence. Limit energy, you reduce extremes, but also reduce racing intensity. There is no perfect solution. Only trade-offs. And in Formula One, trade-offs create conflict. Because every gain comes at someone else's expense. But while all of this is happening inside the paddock, something else is happening outside. Something even more dangerous. Fans are starting to notice. The racing feels different. Less natural. Less exciting. More confusing. And the numbers are already showing it. Audience dropping. Interest fading. People tuning out. Not because they don't love Formula One. Because they don't recognize it. And that's the part that changes everything. Because once fans disconnect, the entire system is at risk. Sponsors. Broadcast deals. Manufacturers. Everything depends on engagement. And right now, that engagement is slipping. Fast. Which is why the pressure on the FIA is no longer just internal. It's global. Because now, they're not just fixing a technical issue. They're trying to protect the sport itself. And that's why Miami becomes so important. Not just another race. A deadline. The moment where all these changes, all this pressure, all this urgency, has to deliver something real. Because when those cars go back on track, there are no excuses left. No more time. No more hiding. Just one question. Did it work? Do the cars behave differently? Do the drivers trust them again? Does it feel like Formula One? Or does it still feel broken? Because if it's the second one, if nothing really changes, then this doesn't slow down. It explodes. More criticism. More division. More pressure. Until the FIA is forced into something much bigger than adjustments. A complete rethink. And that is the moment they've been trying to avoid from the very beginning. Because once you reach that point, you're not fixing a regulation anymore. You're admitting that something went wrong at the core. And that truth is getting closer with every single race. And if it reaches that point, there's no controlled way out. Because Formula One doesn't just admit mistakes. It absorbs them. It carries them. And sometimes, it gets defined by them. And this has all the signs of becoming one of those moments. Because what started as a technical issue has now exposed something much deeper. A miscalculation. Not in execution. In philosophy. Because the 2026 rules were built with a clear goal. Modernize the sport. Make it more efficient. More attractive to manufacturers. More aligned with the future. And on paper, that vision made sense. But what this crisis is revealing is that something essential was underestimated. The human element. The driver. Because Formula One has always been more than technology. It's been about control. Instinct. Precision under pressure. And right now, that connection is breaking. Drivers are no longer fully in control. They are managing a system. Reacting to it. Working around it. Instead of commanding it. And that changes everything. Because once the driver stops being the center, the sport starts to feel different. Not wrong, but unfamiliar. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. But here's the part that makes this even more critical. Because the FIA is not just trying to fix performance. They're trying to restore something intangible. Confidence, trust, feeling, and those things cannot be adjusted with numbers. You can reduce power. You can change energy limits. You can smooth out extremes. But you cannot easily bring back the instinct. Once it's gone. And that's why the situation feels so fragile. Because the solution isn't just technical. It's emotional. It's about making drivers feel like they are in control again. And if they don't, then no regulation will ever feel right. But here's the reality the FIA now has to face. Every decision from this point forward will define the future of the sport. Not just how it performs, but how it feels. Because Formula One is not just watched. It's experienced. And right now, that experience is under pressure. From drivers, from fans, from the entire ecosystem around the sport. And that's why Miami becomes more than a race. It becomes a line. A moment where everything converges. All the changes, all the expectations, all the doubt. Because when the lights go out, there will be no interpretation, no narrative, only truth. Do the cars behave naturally? Do the drivers push without hesitation? Does the racing feel real again? Or does it still feel controlled? Because that answer will decide everything. If the changes work, this becomes a recovery. A moment where Formula One corrected itself before it was too late. But if they don't, if that feeling is still missing, then this situation doesn't stabilize. It escalates. Beyond control, beyond simple fixes, into something much bigger. A complete reset. And that's the moment the FIA has been trying to avoid from the very beginning. Because once you reach that point, you're not just changing rules. You're rewriting the identity of Formula One. And that is the real story behind these leaks. Not what is being changed, but why it has to be changed so quickly. Because when a sport moves this fast to correct itself, it's not evolution, it's reaction. And reaction means something went wrong, at the very core. And when a sport is forced into reaction like this, it reveals something no one wanted to admit. This was never under control. Because if it was, you wouldn't see emergency meetings. You wouldn't see leak changes. You wouldn't see rules being rewritten before the first phase of the season is even complete. That doesn't happen in Formula One, unless something has gone seriously wrong. And that's the final layer of this entire story. Because everything we've seen, the crashes, the complaints, the leaks, the urgency, they all point to one conclusion. This wasn't a surprise. It was a risk that was taken and underestimated. Because the warning signs were there. Long before the first race, engineers questioned the balance. Teams raised concerns about energy cycles. Experts warned about unpredictability. But the vision was too strong. The idea of a new era? Too important to slow down. So the sport moved forward. Confident. Committed. Certain it would work. And for a moment, it looked like it might. Until reality arrived. At full speed. And exposed everything. Because Formula One doesn't hide flaws. It magnifies them. Every weakness becomes visible. Every mistake becomes undeniable. And that's exactly what happened here. The system wasn't ready. Not for real racing. Not for real pressure. Not for 20 drivers pushing at the absolute limit. And now, the consequences are unfolding in real time. But here's what makes this moment historic. Because this isn't just about fixing a bad regulation. It's about redefining how Formula One makes decisions. Because from this point forward, every new rule, every new concept, every new direction, will be judged through what's happening right now. This becomes the reference point, the warning, the example of what happens when innovation moves faster than understanding. And that changes everything. Because it forces the sport to rethink its priorities. Not just performance, not just technology, balance between progress and control, between innovation and identity. Because if that balance is lost, you don't just create problems. You change the sport. And that's the edge Formula One is standing on right now. But here's the final truth. Because beyond all the technical details, beyond all the politics, beyond all the changes, this comes down to something very simple. What do drivers feel when they're in the car? Do they feel in control? Do they feel connected? Do they feel like they're racing? Because if the answer is yes, then everything can be fixed. The sport moves forward. Stronger. Smarter. More complete.